daughter's recently been very ill with severe classic anemia, and when we have had an emergency situation, we have had to travel to Worcester, over 30 minutes away, which with a severely ill child is 30 minutes too far. What would you do as the MP for Redditch to ensure the return of these vital services?
Does everyone get the question? Yeah? Okay, let's start off with Andrew. What would you do?
Well, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear the experience that you've had there. It's an experience no parent should have. And completely agree with the assessment that we need these services back in the island. Now, I outlined in my previous answer how we want to reduce the pressure on different departments in the hospital. With the nationwide policy of personal care for everyone in their own home, getting rid of the people that just can't be sent home if they don't have care. Freeing up that resource will free up space in hospitals around the country. It's going to free up the time, the energy, the money to provide these services where we need them. Now, we also need to make sure that the quality of the services is as high as possible. So while there are very, very fine balancing act of getting not getting the distance too long, but making sure we have these specialists in each of these areas to treat these conditions with high standard that everybody here deserves. So yes, I would most definitely try to get these services back, but we need to look for the money in wherever we can find it. It's not just money, is it? It's the space of the hospital, it's the people that we may need to bring in from overseas to staff our hospitals. All of these policies come together to create sort of a holistic improving of the country. So there is no magic bullet to create these amazing hospitals in every town around the country. I wish that we could afford such luxury of having that, having all of our services here. And if any candidate here says that they're able to achieve that, well, they're either deluded or lying, because nobody can achieve that. So we need to make very, very tough decisions on which services we bring back, in what order, and how we fund those services. And I'm sure that's not the exact answer you want to hear, but if I misled you and told you, I would not be a great MP if you elected me in 2 weeks' time.
Just on that, Andrew, I mean, where would your priority lie? Would it be in acute care, mental health care, or primary care?
I think my first priority would be bringing back the paediatric A&E, because the time pressure is so critical, and having them go to a hospital further away can cost lives. After that, I think maternity care, having mothers treated and giving birth in their own town, many other things where if they are rushed to hospital on the day, they're not spending however long.
Okay, thank you very much. Julie, can you make the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry to hear about the problems you've had because of the under-resourcing of the islands and the centralisation of the services elsewhere. And Anne Marchant wasn't the only one who mentioned these issues. I've heard from pregnant mothers who've had to travel stuck on the M5. It's just, come on, we live in a modern society, for goodness sake. It's absolutely unacceptable. So what is the fundamental issue here? Because we keep putting more and more money into the NHS, and yet we've got one of the worst outcomes, in Europe. You look at the French NHS system, which doesn't cost much more than ours, and they have much better outcomes. But if we look specifically at the Alex, and then you've got to look at NHS funding and say, do they have enough staff Do they have the right staff? Can they keep hold of those staff? Have they got the right surgeons? Okay, so a couple of things that we do is to get the staff and to keep the staff and get the staff to come back. We'd have a zero basic rate of tax for 3 years for nurses. Yeah? The other thing is, do nurses need degrees? Do police need degrees? I mean, this was part of Tony Blair's education. Well, goodness me, 20 years on, we can't recruit enough staff for the nurses, for the police force, because they can't pass the maths exam. Hang on, the carers, do they need to know maths in detail to be a nurse?
Yes.
I wouldn't go to your nurse.
Apprenticeships, on-the-job training. You know, why do they have to have a degree? They can have apprenticeships on-the-job training. We would also have to take the pressure off A&E, pharmacy first, GP second, A&E third. And then the other thing we do is NHS vouchers. Yeah, if you haven't seen a doctor in 3 days with a serious issue, you get a voucher to go and see a private doctor. If you haven't seen a consultant within 3 weeks, you get a voucher to see a private consultant. If you haven't seen a surgeon within 9 weeks, you get a voucher to see a private surgeon. We have to get the waiting list down, but that has to be a solution. I mean, Labour says they're going to get the waiting list down by 40,000, but I'm not quite sure how you're going to do that. I'm sorry. So, yeah.
Right, thank you very much. Rachel.
Thank you for the question, and I completely agree with you that is unacceptable, and it is absolutely ridiculous that in a town like Redditch that is growing and expanding, people still have to travel to Worcester to give birth, and it is always mums and families, unfortunately, that suffer, and so it's completely wrong, and that's why I've continually made this my priority, and I've put the work in, and we've seen real results. And it's quite nice to see Chris sort of going through my record. And in all that time, I didn't see any suggestions or any constructive help from Labour in Redditch to help me do this work. Nevertheless, I've backed it on, and the people of Redditch have been behind me all the way, fortunately, which is why we've now been able to have more funding for the Alex, but the work hasn't stopped. So if you re-elect me, I will continue being a thorn in the side of whatever government is in power, as I have been a thorn in the side of the Conservative government, the outgoing Conservative government, the last Parliament and the Parliament before. So that has absolutely nothing to do with being a backbencher. I've been able to achieve very significant investment in the Alex, but there is a lot more to do. The work isn't done yet. People have talked about the workforce. In order to have services, it's not just enough to have a building, an expansion on the site, we need to have the workforce. So what we've been able to secure is a new medical school in Worcester to train doctors, because you have to have that specialist skill set there in order to staff the services safely. Final thing is that people sort of often challenge, obviously, whoever's in power, whether it's an MP or a government, about the NHS. The NHS is an independent, non-political organisation, and that leads to a lot of frustrations from individual MPs like me. Whoever is your MP is going to struggle with that same frustration. So when you think about who you're going to elect, are you going to elect someone that's brave enough to stand up and fight and say, this is wrong, I'm going to take on these vested interests, these health bosses who go round and round in circles without being accountable to you, the people of Redditch? I think that's wrong. I've always stood against it, and I'll continue to do that.
Rachel, priority, acute, primary, or mental? Okay.
Well, all of it is holistic, and I don't put it in that way, because it all depends on each other. I talked a little bit earlier about primary care and our plan to get more GP appointments. That's vital for the whole health economy to work. That's why we need the 3 hospitals in Worcestershire, and we need all of them to work together, and they all need to work and be funded and have the right level of staff. So it's not, if you prioritise one to the detriment of the
David?
I'm not a medical person and I'm not really qualified to talk about the complex medical issues that exist these days, which seem to be many and various. So my answer would be that there needs to be a national review of hospitals, a national review of which hospitals will specialise in which particular area, because they people could be transported around. But at the moment it seems to be a mishmash of local authorities and government initiatives. I just think there should be an overall plan, and it doesn't seem to be one that exists at the moment. And that would result from a wide-ranging review of all hospitals and all services.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, right, just to continue on that, where would the investment come? You talk about, the review of hospital health services, and I think it's common knowledge that more investment is needed in hospitals. Where would that money come from?
Well, there's only one source of it, really. It's the government, and the government raises taxes. So it's got to come from us, originally. And somehow efficiencies have got to be found, and the money has got to be found. I can't give a better answer than that. I'm not close enough to it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Chris?
So we used to have a fantastic NHS. Between 1997 and 2007 and 2008, when we invested properly at European levels of investment into our NHS, we had some fantastic. You can shake your head, sir. We had some of the greatest public. We had the highest public. We had the highest public satisfaction rates with our NHS on record, and that's true. The public satisfaction rates were at the highest. You could get a GP appointment within 48 hours. You had to get there within 48 hours and you couldn't get an appointment. The truth is, we have a recruitment crisis in our NHS, and we've had one for over a decade. Because when you turn the taps off on investment, when you reduce the number of places for nurse bursaries, or when you turn off, when you don't provide enough medical places for doctors to trade, you then have problems down the line. Why did we lose maternity services in Redditch? Because they couldn't find enough staff or specialists to put on a safe service. That is what was told to our former MP, rest in peace, Carolyn Lee, and Sajid Javid when the decision was made to take away those services. It was a financial reason why we lost our services. They couldn't ensure that people going to the Alex would get the level of service that they deserved when they went to Redditch. We could have done something about that. We could have invested in people in the NHS. We have a huge retention problem in the NHS right now. One of the problems we have about immigration is we desperately need to bring people to make our NHS function. We need to go back to long-term thinking. We need to take long-term decisions. We need an NHS that's fit for purpose. And James, I'm sorry, I'm glad to hear that your daughter's doing well, but we need to have a fully functioning hospital. And if you're asking me what I'm going to do, I'm going to do exactly what I did 10, 12, 13 years ago. I'm going to get this town, and it was this town's campaign. It wasn't a single person's campaign. The whole of Redditch came together to say, don't take this service away from our town. We need that community spirit again. And if that means that I have to speak and vote against a prospective Labour government to get our services back, that is what I'll do. But at the same time, our problems with our NHS aren't just about maternity and conjecture services to the Alex. There are 7.5 million people on waiting lists for surgery or appointments in this country. That is a disgrace. I'm meeting people on the doors that are waiting months. We used to have a cancer treatment guarantee in this country where people got the treatment that they needed as soon as that was possible. That doesn't exist in this country anymore. There is so much wrong with our NHS that we need to fix, but it starts by being pragmatic about the solutions. Yes, we will use private hospitals to get rid of the backlog of those people waiting for treatment right now. We will employ more people in the NHS through our new NHS recruitment strategy. But we've got to be serious. If we want an NHS that's fit for purpose, that gives us the level of service that we need, we can't do what has happened over the last 14 years, which is historically below average input into our NHS.
Thank you.
To the kind gentleman who asked the question, as a parent of two beautiful children, my heart goes out to you. I have give you an example, when he was 9 months old and he was the last letter in ICU, which is very used for children of 6 years of age. And that's a life support mission for anybody who doesn't. Labour, and I say this as an ex-Tory, which many of you may not know. I'm actually sitting councillor in Roxborough Parish Council, and I'm an ex-Tory. Labour and Conservatives here have done nothing but damage the Alex. As far as I'm concerned, it's up to everybody to make their own opinion. The Alex is a shadow of what it used to be. When Rachel came in, it wasn't purely because she came in and she couldn't do anything that things disappeared. It started a long time before that. And before that, we did have it. So everybody goes from red, it then goes to blue, it then goes back to red. It's never an cycle. The Alex needs restoration, it needs funding from central government. It's money all of you pay in your taxes. As a child, whenever I've been to hospital, I remember it being a positive, pleasant experience, apart from having to go there. But a good service. I lost my father recently, last year, in Worcester. I couldn't fault the nurses or the doctors. They were very empathetic. It was a brilliant service. However, to say that a population the size of Redditch cannot have the services it requires for a parent to say, my birth certificate says I was born in Redditch, but my children's never will. I'm sorry. It's not correct. It's not right. And it is nothing less than absolutely wrong. There's no other way to mask it. If anybody does want it, they can. In my stance, is simple. What's happened here with Alex and what situation has presented itself through Labour and Conservatives over the many years is a wrong situation. You deserve better. The Alex deserves better. It needs the funding, and the funding is what will get the staff and the space. And when you say it's an